Eric Muadh, Muadh.com with world market analysis for the weekend of April 30th and May 1st, 2016. Let's take a look at markets here. We see that Japan was down. I believe that was yesterday on Thursday, but anyway, was down. Most recent trade 0.36%. Hong Kong was down 1%. The other markets were pretty much down or slightly unchanged, but to the downside. Take a look at European markets at the close of Friday's action. We are seeing European markets down. Notably, we can see that the FTSE is down 1.2%. The DAX is down almost 3%, and so is the French CAC 40. Right now, if you take a look at the Americas, we can see that we are pretty much down as far as Brazil is concerned. The Canadian market is slightly unchanged. We take a look at the US market with about half trading day session left. We can see that the Dow is down about 0.8%, Nasdaq down 1%, and S&P is down 0.9%. Gold is up very nicely. Let's take a look at the charts. If we begin by taking a look at the Australian market here, I think around here, given how markets are trading worldwide, is a spot on the chart where I think it struggles, because if you go back to this line here, this RSI break, somewhere here as of last year, which was the highs of 2015, we are coming back to test that line. In my opinion, we seem to struggle to hold above that. Many of the worldwide charts are struggling on their weekly charts, and I think here's another example of a chart that could struggle. We are also coming back on price to test the closing high here on a weekly closing basis of around 53.50, which was December's weekly closing high there. We've come back and we seem to be stalling. So until we can clear, for example, this resistance here, one can expect the Australian market to struggle after a nice move off the lows here in February. So nice move, but I think more than likely a pullback is in store. Take a look at a long-term weekly chart and you see a couple of observations. Number one, on this 6-year weekly chart, we can see top side resistance there, potentially around that level there. So that could be a problem week to week until the market can clear that line of resistance. Also, if we go back and test the previous line we drew on the 2-year weekly, so this break here recently gives us a nice line where it is struggling. So there's a line right somewhere there. Reason why I wanted to show you this 6-year weekly chart is because if you draw the line and test it backwards, it gives you some of the major sell signals. Every time we move back below the red line, we get a major drop, resistance on the red line for a major drop, and even here coincided with a break somewhere around there. The RSI break here brought the market off the highs here, and of course once we broke through here, we came off the highs. So I think coming back to test that same level, one can assume that the weekly chart for the Australian market right now is showing lots of resistance. Until we can clear those two lines, the red line and also the blue line, one has to assume that around here the weekly chart is suggesting that the next meaningful swing trade is potentially to the downside. If we take a look at China, we can see here that if you take the monthly closing high there, this monthly closing high, and even this most recent monthly closing high for 2016, you get a line that looks something like this. And clearly what we can see here is as long as the market is struggling to hold above this line, this is a line of resistance that the market needs to move above. Otherwise, we are looking at a pullback here. As long as the market is trading and showing resistance like it did this past month, the indication here is that it continues to struggle. So also keep in mind that we had come back, we were trying to recapture the recent break below this monthly closing low for 2015. As of right now, the market has been unable to move back above the break point of this previous monthly closing low. And so again, so we've broke through that, came back, we've tested it here, failed here again, and we seem to be failing. More than likely, we are looking at a market that is showing potential for moving lower. Keep in mind here that the RSI on the monthly needs to be above 50 if the market is to do well. Right now we seem to be rejected around the 50 level, suggesting a bearish outlook. Keep in mind the last time we moved above the 50 level here, the market went on a nice major run. So either the market moves above 50 and starts building, or rejection at the RSI 50 on the monthly can be looked upon as being bearish development. If we take a look at Japan, we can see that it had a big drop this past week, about 5%, and it is because the weekly RSI moved back below 50. Keep in mind that there's also two lines of resistance. On the weekly, there's a topside resistance. If you take a look at this line here, that is clear rejection on the line. Also, there's another line that we've been talking about, which is the previous break line, or the most recent break line for 2016. So this break right there is what the market was coming back to test on the RSI, and you can see that we went above the red line and back below it. That is why we are seeing this pullback. So we got two lines that the market needs to be moving above. Otherwise, for now, as long as those two lines are showing resistance, one has to assume that the market continues to be looking like it wants to go down week to week. If you take a look at the Nifty, the Indian market, we can see that there's also resistance on the weekly top side, RSI, simple line connecting the top. You can see here we are showing some type of resistance, which I think is a problem for the market for now. Also come back and test this recent break of 2015. So the break here is what the market is testing right now, and right now we seem to be stalling. So you can see also there the market has come and hit that red line, and we are struggling to move above that. There's also some type of price rejection. If you take the weekly closing high there, the weekly closing high, and even this weekly closing high, you'll see that the market is struggling to hold above the very well defined trend line. So price is showing that as long as the market is failing to move above that trend line on the price, that this here continues to be a market that net looks like it wants to pull back, unless the market can have enough strength to finally move above the trend line in price, and also finally move above those two lines on the weekly RSI. So either we can show resistance here and pull back. Otherwise, if the market has enough momentum, it needs to clear the prescribed resistance levels if it is to see higher prices. If we take a look at the South African market by way of the South African stock market index, or the Dow Jones stock market index that tracks the South African market, we can see again topside RSI resistance coming here, giving us double top on the weekly. So right now we are seeing resistance also coming back to test the previous break line. So this break brought the market off the highs. We haven't been back to those levels since then. We draw another line from there, which should be something like that. We've hit this line once before during this high. We've come here again and we did that with a double top. So right now the weekly is suggesting that the South African market is also net. Looks like it is poised to point down week to week. The interpretation here is that as long as the market is showing resistance on the RSI on the weekly, until we can move above those two lines, we have to assume that the market here wants to pull back. As we see here, the French market has had a nice run, just like most of the markets worldwide, off the lows of February. But I think right now we are coming to a challenging spot where we might see resistance. And again, the weekly chart does show resistance based on the previous break. So the break line here, this RSI trend line break right there, and also which is this break coming off the highs, and we haven't been back to that level. We draw a line from there, and this has already been a problem once before in 2015. During this period here, we were unable to move above the red line for the highs there, and here we seem to be coming back and we are being rejected. So net, given this weekly chart, one has to assume that with rejection this past week, this market continues to point down on a week-to-week basis. Same thing can be said about the German market. Again, a very simple line, RSI break, which is this break off the highs. We haven't been back to those levels. A line from there gives us a lot of information. As you can see, we struggled to move above the line here for these highs. We struggled again here for the highs there, and again here this past week. You can see that the market hit that level, and as of right now the weekly chart is being rejected on the red line, suggesting that already we are seeing that week to week the market continues to show that it wants to move lower. If you take a look at the FTSE, as we have been observing over the last couple of weeks, we had noticed that it had come back to test the break line. So we've been expecting a pullback based on the fact that the RSI broke down here in 2015 off the highs, and now we had come back in 2016 to test the break line, and of course we had noticed that it was already stalling as of last week. So here we are seeing that this is resistance that the market has to clear before it can move higher. One can set an alert here for the weekly closing highs of 2016. Should the FTSE move above that closing high, and the level to watch there is 6,343.75, any breakout here would suggest that the market has cleared the RSI resistance. Otherwise, for now, the weekly chart continues to point down. And in fact, if you take a look at a 3-year weekly, this is a 2-year weekly. Take a look at a 3-year weekly, and we had discussed this over the last weekend video analysis, and we see that if you take the highs on the weekly RSI, you can see that we've come to hit the same resistance line perfectly over the last couple of weeks, and we are already pointing down. So here, until we can clear this clear line of resistance, plus if we can clear the previous line we just drew, which is here, if we cannot clear those two lines, one can expect a major pullback. Otherwise, if you're a market bull and you want the market to move higher, the market has to clear and move above those two RSI lines of resistance. If we take a look at a 2.5-year weekly chart for the Canadian market, we see here such a strong move off the lows. As you can see here, nice move off the lows. Now the question is, what next? And I think here if we take a look at the weekly based on the previous break, so this break here, right there, that break in 2015 brought the market off the highs. We draw a line from there, and I think this is what is being tested in my opinion. So right now we are coming back to test that line. Week to week, if we turn down here and show resistance, then around here one can expect the Canadian market to start pulling back. Also keep in mind that if you test the same red line and go backwards, you can see that it gives you a lot of information short term. Here was resistance for the highs there, resistance on the red line for the highs here, and also this break line off the highs of 2014. So I think the weekly chart here in my opinion suggests that there could be a pullback. Take a look at the hourly for the Canadian market, and you see here that there was a slight attempt to make new highs on a short-term basis, but that attempt is coming with negative divergence, and unfortunately it is the worst type of negative divergence because the RSI, as price was attempting new highs, the RSI here has made a low and it hasn't even gone above 61.8, which happens to be the worst type of negative divergence. So I think that this suggests that the next meaningful swing trade here more than likely is going to be to the downside to be consistent with other world markets. And I think also if we take a look at the Brazilian market after such a nice move off the lows here in late January, such a strong move, I think now questions can be asked about the strength, because we are seeing that we are making lower lows on the RSI here while the price has been advancing, and I think that sets up a stage for potential pullback. And if you take a look at the hourly, and here we are using the EWZ, so the ETF that tracks the Brazilian market here in the US, and all we have to do is draw a line from there, and you see that it is showing also that this is negative divergence, which might be a problem short term as prices have been making higher highs. You can see here that the RSI has not been making showing any improvement. So I think this negative divergence net to be consistent with other markets suggests that we are looking at a situation where worldwide more than likely we are more and more pointing to markets going down. So again, with the US market about to close in 3 hours. We'll see how we close. Net looks like the markets want to pull back. We shall see. Otherwise, check out my part 1 of the US market analysis for this weekend in a separate video. Eric Mwadhe, mwadhe.com. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the new month of May. We shall see how things go. Good luck. Peace and blessings. E-A-C-S.